Hello and welcome back to the Inverted Castle, a Metroidvania enthusiast podcast. I'm an uwu catboy who deserves to be punished, Eric Fox, and joining me as always is a man who, despite his best efforts, cannot kill me in any way that matters, Tom Blight.
Jeez, I don't have a thing for this. No.
I have you exactly where I want you, which is, of course, playing Nine Souls, a game developed by Red Candle Games, known for their horror games Devotion and Detention prior. Nine Souls was released, as of this episode's release, about almost exactly a year ago. So, you know, we're showing up a day late and a dollar short, but there's never been a better time to get into Nine Souls, in my opinion.
I guess, I don't know. Seems as good as any.
Not to spoil things, but in my opinion, this is an all-timer, like, out of the gate in almost every capacity that it swings for. I think it nails and, like, goes above and beyond in terms of story, presentation, gameplay, design. It's pretty good.
I can see people who are less masochistic being a little frustrated with it.
Yes, I don't think this is a game that is going to be beloved by everyone who plays, but for the experience it's going for, I think it nails. Like, you're allowed to not like it, and that's fine, but it is what it is ultimately, and I don't think it has many flaws in regards to what exactly it's going for. Like a bit on the accessibility, probably. Like, it does include a story mode, but we'll get into my minor gripes with it. But overall, for me personally, fantastic.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Even though it is hard and could possibly be frustrating, I never actually really got that frustrated with it.
Which is, yeah. You know, I was anticipating at least some level of controller throwing personally, but like really it only ended up going so far as to really accentuate the catharsis, we'll say, of finally overcoming that one boss, of which there are like most of the bosses are that one boss to some extent. A couple of them too easy in my opinion, but
yeah, like, I mean, spoilers, the final boss took me 5 hours, I think, and I was still enjoying it at the end of the 5 hours.
Yeah, I believe you sent me a text, this is so hard and so fun.
Yeah.
But at that point, you were still in phase one, which, of course, old heads of the genre will know. Oh, of course, there's never just one phase.
I think I sent that when I had been playing against phase 2 for about an hour.
That makes sense. But what does all this mean? Who are we fighting? Who are we? Who are the Nine Souls? Why does the Souls not have a U in it? Oh, there's a very good reason for that.
Yeah, they leave you kind of in the dark for a lot of it.
Ironically.
Slowly picking things up as you go that the main character obviously knows.
Yeah, like the game kind of opens with Yi, the main cat on the box, being essentially left for dead after a failed coup. He gets absorbed by these weird black root things, and then the story begins proper in a human village. They're called ape men, but they're recognizably human as opposed to the cat men that Yi is. And you have had a human child imprinted upon you, following you around. You're taking care of each other, but Yi is kind of standoffish, trying not to get attached. We know how this goes. But this ape village, turns out, has this ceremony where they revere these gods who obviously we are not particularly trusting of. Yi has his own goals, we'll say. Like, there's so much in this game. It's hard to be really know like how much detail to go into.
Yeah.
I wonder if I should just like kind of speed through some like bullet points of the main things you should know.
I guess like at least getting to the facility, right? So it's like this ceremony turns out to actually be the Solarians harvesting the brains of the ape men.
Yeah.
Yi pointedly does not intervene until it's Xuan, his friend's turn to be harvested. Apparently didn't feel the need to save the other people.
And also it's implied that he wasn't supposed to save any of them, and by doing that has endangered his mission of getting his sweet, sweet revenge.
That's fair. He probably did not have to do that to enter. He probably just needed to jump down into the facility proper. So that sort of then reveals, hey, this isn't where you thought it was. Maybe they're actually in a like enclosure in a facility manned by robot warriors.
Yeah, it turns out this is sci-fi. Like the opening implies like, oh yeah, lush fields, very ancient agrarian human technology, but that's all just a facade. It's actually inside a space station.
Yeah. And then like slowly from there you start picking up more and more details of how the setting actually works. The space station is a whole island that got yeeted into space.
Yeah. The Solarians came from a planet that is plagued by some incurable illness. As a last-ditch effort for them, they launched this island into space. The 10 souls, of which Yi is one, the 9 others are obviously he's no longer affiliated with. But yeah, these souls end up being the like de facto leaders. They all have their different facets of society they run on this new space colony, essentially. They named themselves Souls, S-O-L, because they are the sons, the luminaries people should turn to. They posture themselves as just like the elevated beings here to usher in a new dawn and find a cure for this disease that had spread across the Solarians.
Which also, I find it funny that they also are named Solarians and presumably named their son Soul, exactly like how we refer to our son.
Yeah, and I believe the island that got yeeted is currently like spider-webbed kind of around our current sun near the blue planet that all the ape men got kidnapped from.
Yeah, the pale blue planet, which is totally Earth.
Strongly hinted towards being Earth.
Yeah. Like, so the island carries the primordial roots, which is that black and green stuff, which is really good at photosynthesis to convert solar energy into I forget what they call it, rhizomatic energy.
I believe you're correct, rhizomatic energy. Sci-fi nonsense, but also I don't know enough about Taoism to know like what's a reference to sort of that history and culture. So apologies in advance if I miss anything like that. But this game is just rife with not only just references, but like including philosophies and iconography of it. As far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Not sure about your particular experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about things to be like, oh, that's the thing.
Yeah, sorry. We are incredibly ignorant. I can't learn things. I can't half remember a Wikipedia search from 2 weeks ago.
But yeah, so I guess how far do we want to go into setting the whole shebang?
At this point, it's the reason they're all here, trying to find a cure. All of the Solarians are basically put into cryostasis to like halt the disease. All the souls are also often spending hundreds of years in stasis to stave off this disease while they try and find a cure. These cryostasises are called soulscapes, I believe,
yeah.
Which is just running like a dream simulation, like a temporary heaven for everybody. But in order to power the complex computational system to get that to go, that's why they need all of the ape man brains.
Yeah, they're in the Matrix, except personal matrices instead of one big one, I guess.
Yeah, it turns out that things are not going so well with regards to the whole disease getting solved. And Yi in particular is looking for revenge and to like overthrow the system because he no longer has any faith in it. Not to get into too many spoilers, but like there's like a lot of history of where the Solarians came from. I think it's Penglai. Throughout the game, you'll get like codexes, references to history, just like a bunch of backstory that makes all the events that came together to put us in the situation kind of make sense.
Yeah.
And like his worldview and how that's been shaped by his experiences. But all of it is, I think, presented very well. Like there will be flashback scenes with his sister every time you transition to a new area, which is like match cutting the current area with the scene in the past in a very effective way. Everything that made him who he was at the beginning of the story, interspersed with his interactions with Schwan, or Sean, as I like to call him in my head, because I'm an Anglophone, and how all of those interactions kind of shape who he is at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Throughout all of this, you're just going soul by soul in their bespoke zones in society and taking them out.
Yep.
Each of the souls, they represent some virtue. Like the guy who's like storing all of the artifacts is legacy. The warrior is discipline. The guy who has the future sight is insight. Stuff like that. Yi's is innovation.
Yeah.
And all of the souls, once you're at the point of fighting them, they've all been like either some sort of corruption of that virtue or an inversion. The guy who's all about legacy is now like just selling all of the artifacts to like line his own pockets. The person who's in charge of selflessness is basically running a debaucherous infinite party, desperately clinging to her brother who's definitely dead, but is now like a bit of a zombie.
Yeah.
It's very well done. And every time you beat one of the bosses, you'll see like short vignettes of who they were before, where they become. Like, again, like it's very neat storytelling that's very, I think, efficient for this kind of game to kind of like, I don't know, it adds this vibrancy to like what it would otherwise just be the next boss.
Yeah. All of the people that he is fighting here have a history with him.
Yeah.
Right? And so their history also intertwines with the history of their world. So, I don't know. It's well done.
It makes sense, like, how it came to this and, like, what the game is overall talking about in terms of unchecked ambition, the corruption of authority, what it means to live well. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that I just didn't get because, again, I'm not as familiar with Taoist philosophies, but it was very sensible.
A big part of it that it grapples with is acceptance, right?
Yes.
With Lear being the other figure, which is not one of the souls, but a historical figure who just decided, no, we're not going to keep moving technology forward. We're going to give away technologies that benefit everyone, and we're going to stop building anymore.
Yeah, the inaction declaration or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a thing that like Yi fully rejected at the beginning of the story. He joined these other people who were just like, no, we have to keep continuing. Unfortunately, his master, Aegong, also someone who rejected this notion and continuing to search for like immortality, like a rejection of the inevitability of death. In turn, accidentally was the one who created the big virus that doomed their civilization.
Yep. Whoops. Oops.
Yeah, she ends up being the big bad at the end, who you need to confront as the final boss, but your ending will depend on whether or not you ingratiated yourself with Sean and the other ape men. So you can either choose to do what I would consider the bad end of defeat Aegong, return to Penglai, and continue the search for a cure on your own. I feel like this is the bad end because this ends up being the inversion of his innovation virtue, where he just keeps doing the same thing that will inevitably fail.
Yeah.
Or you can do the true end, which is make sure the ape men get back to Earth in time for the Ice Age to end and thus our civilization, hey? But in turn, sacrifice him and the rest of all of the Solarians because, well, you know, you just kind of have to accept inevitability at some point, I guess.
Yeah, but they've spent a long time trying to fight the destiny that was coming for them, and it's just like, well, okay, we tried. Turns out, maybe not something we can change.
Exactly, or the solution at that point that Aegon set into motion is the disease that is corrupting them as like unthinking zombie beasts. It's not better. It's not great. And how much more like cruelty and misery will you continue to wreak in your pursuit of survival, I guess? It's a lot. There's a lot here that we're also skipping over, a lot of things in the past that kind of shape all of this, but I was really impressed by the presentation of it as well as the actual meat, in addition to being a kick-ass action game.
Yeah, I don't know. It was well made.
It's one of the rare times where you don't just skim over the story and being like, yeah, you know, it's kind of whatever. I guess there are characters. No, this one's got some meat to it. And without going into like a full like video essay over each one, I think each character's got a story and I think they're all worthwhile.
Yeah. And like they kept what exactly the plan was away from you for a pretty long time. And it's like, well, Yi has 2 whole morality pets, so it's pretty clear it's going to be something pretty bad. And it turns out he was the architect of the whole let's harvest ape-men brains part.
Yeah, part of that whole guilt and like standoffishness with Sean, part of that's he's responsible for their current, like, meager existence.
Yeah.
But Sean is, he's such a precocious little, like, full of curiosity. You can't help but love the little guy. And every time you give him a new thing from Yi's, like, society, and just, like, kind of teach him more and more about the world, and in turn, you learn more and more about the culture. I don't know. Going back to your little hub world every time to, like, chat with the fam. It was great.
Yeah, which actually kind of reminds me of a funny thing where Kwafu is the first soul that you pursue. I mean, I don't think he has to be first, but I think you can go to Gumong first. I went halfway down her path and then did Kwafu because he was easier.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny. He's Yi's friend. He's not against Yi, but you also kind of end up knowing the least about him, weirdly. I don't know.
I mean, he sticks around more than the other souls because you don't actually end up killing him. You fight his guard dog, essentially, and he ends up being part of the crew. He's in the hub world and builds you weapons.
And he is afraid of rabies, I think? I don't know. He had some weird comments about Ape Man having a disease that he was terrified by.
Yeah, he's played for a bit of comedy with being a little neurotic and like at first very wary of interacting directly with the ape men. I'm sure there's been some sort of smear campaign against them for the rest of the Solarians, but he's the one that Yi ends up dragooning into leading the ape men back to Earth as the last Solarian because Yi does not make it.
Yeah.
At least I don't think, it gets spiritual. So, what his soul's doing, who knows? And I mean that with the you, not language is hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kwafu, yeah, I guess you know less about his history, but you interact with him so much more that I think you get more of his character than any of the other souls.
I guess. It's like you get surface interactions, but they also kind of say less on average. I don't know.
It's not as in-depth as your drinking buddy, Shenong, who's a very weird character. He's another human, but he needs to eat poisons in order to live. He's like an inverse, like, he can't have real food. He needs poison food. And by ingesting poison, he makes really good sake. Don't ask how he makes it, please. And when you give him enough poisons, like just key items throughout the game, you'll have like a drinking buddies chat of people who kind of don't like each other, but they've got their own relationship developing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get your max HP increased, but that's less important than the dialogue,
Yeah.
I don't need HP. I'll just parry better.
I mean, I definitely needed the HP, but yeah, I mean, we also should talk about gameplay systems. So this game is very parry dependent. I mean, there is no block other than parry. I'm usually pretty bad at parrying in games that offer one, but I guess because this one doesn't have a block, the incentives are very much use the parry system. This is not all or nothing or haha, you screwed up the parry and therefore we're going to deal extra damage to you.
Yeah.
It's the better you get at parrying, the less damage you take. The partial parries will register internal damage, which is basically like uncommitted damage until you actually take damage properly.
Yeah, there are ways to get it back. It recovers very slowly over time, but you'll have other chances to like either perfect parry it back, or there's at least one optional upgrade that just swinging your main attack will build it back up. But yeah, crucially, it's when you're a bit too early on the parry and it's decently generous. That's when you get your it's like a defense almost. Like you'll still get a bit hit, but you do get all the other benefits of parrying.
Which includes building up your key resource.
Or chi. I always forget QI, which, as an Anglophone, I would say key. I think it's technically chi, or if you're in Britain, it's a panel show. But yeah, that's the main flow is you parry to build up charges of chi, ki, whatever. You then spend those with like a micro dash through the enemy that you'll then have to like stop and it's very brief, but for how fast paced the game is, it is significant. You have to like pause and pop it, and that'll register all of the enemy's internal damage as well as being your main damage option, other than a minor like 3-hit combo.
The 3-hit combo actually deals surprising amounts of damage.
As long as you get the third hit. The first two is really just getting your health back if you have that particular, it's called Jades in this one. It's the medals, it's the like optional equips you'll find throughout the game, one of which allows you to build back internal damage.
Yeah, which was pretty sweet.
But yeah, so like the game is all about parrying. Every enemy is very learnable in terms of its like wind-ups, its visual cues, audio cues, rhythm. The main tenets of a parry game, these are the things you can learn. And I found that every boss, every enemy was eminently learnable. Not necessarily like the first time through, I'm definitely going to react, but you learn what sequences happen. And I tend to rely on rhythm, but everything's there for you, provided you have the baseline reaction to speed.
And like something that I noticed for at least some of the bosses, there is an enemy that essentially works the same way. So it's like, okay, the swordsmen work the same way as the sword-wielding mini-boss, which works the same way as, I don't actually know who works that way. For spears, it's much more obvious because it's the first boss, Kuafu's general. Where it's like, okay, the spear-wielding guys work the same way as the spear-wielding celestial optional mini-boss. Works the same way as the spear-wielding centaur that you fight as a boss.
The minor enemies are like a smaller version of the kinds of attacks you're about to see as part of the boss. This isn't always the case. I think Lady Ethereal, since her whole zone is just an extended platforming challenge without any enemies, she has some similar mechanics to other enemies, but man, what a fight.
I mean, I think she fights like the combination of the two flying enemies, right? The ones with swords for hands that dive at you, and the ones that shoot.
Yeah, like, well, she has many attacks and those count. I'm thinking more of the like swoop in slash that you have to block a bit later than you think. That one took me a minute. I don't think any other enemy has that kind of like a delay between when the main body is like past you and when the attack happens.
I don't know. That one was never trouble for me.
Oh, it took me forever. Well, I mean, because again, parrying early is not punished all that much. It ended up being fine. It was just getting the perfect timing was hard. But the game does kind of lead you to parry as much as you can. Definitely don't keep trying like to parry too late. Spamming it's fine. You're not going to get punished too heavily, but it's going to be once that all that internal damage gets hit once, then obviously you're kind of done. But again, it encourages you to engage with its main mechanic of like, you're not the aggressor until they aggress on you. To a certain extent, your main combo doesn't do all that much on its own unless you really invest in it. It's all about gaining chi, slapping a talisman on them, and learning the timings on when and where you can get in there.
Although I felt like using the charged attacks, which there's a Jade that gives you, if you're charging full charge when you do a perfect parry. I felt like those add up. I used those a lot.
I didn't. I never tried the charged attack.
Oh, that was my bread and butter. I was always charging, always attack. Like, it's almost like a riposte system, right? Where then you're like, okay, I've got this parry. I've got a window to release the charge attack.
I don't know what to tell you. I was too focused on just getting talismans on it.
I mean, yeah, the talisman is strong.
And more learning timings. I felt like I wanted to get good at a fight. There are two that I think ended too early.
Oh.
The one was with Gomong, I think her name is. The one who has the two zombies.
Yeah.
It only had one phase. I was so disappointed.
I did the same thing where I was like, oh no, what's the second phase going to be? And then it was just over.
Yeah, you say, oh no, but in your heart, you're still like, you're more disappointed that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think that their thinking may have been that her second phase is like, you knock down one of the zombies, and then now you have access to her health bar.
Right.
So that's the second phase, is her intervention.
Yeah, maybe there's just no way to get that kind of gimmick of kill an ad to bring out the real health bar, and then you just have that brief window. Extending that, I don't know, maybe there's just no way to have it be fun while it's still being an early game boss.
Yeah, I don't know.
The other one was G, the guy who was basically just all projectile parries. I don't know, I just was able to react to his little needles, and beyond that, he had like a gimmick of He'll enter the stance, and then you pick like what kind of attack he's going to do. But one of them is a beneficial one to you, where he drops a pot that heals you. It was kind of trivial to just hit that every time.
Yeah.
You know,
He was fun.
like, yeah, my biggest problem with the bosses were that I wanted more of them. So clearly something was happening right. But my favorite bosses were Lady Ethereal and Aegon. The 2 3-phase fights. Go figure.
Wait, I don't really consider Aegon to have 3 phases, but okay.
What do you mean?
Unless when you get the true ending, she has a 3rd phase that I need to go back and do the true ending?
Oh, I assumed you had done the true ending. My apologies.
No, I managed to miss it because I hadn't gone back at the right moment, apparently, to do the last Shenong.
Ah, gotcha.
Okay, so there's actually a 3rd phase that I need to go back and do now?
Yes.
Okay.
My condolences.
I don't know. Narratively, I guess it makes sense, but they put you in a point of no return where they lock things out that I felt was kind of unnecessary.
Yes. Once you've beaten the game, it will return you prior to that point of no return. So you'll still have to do the gauntlet past that, but it's not like it's starting a whole new game over.
That gauntlet was also annoying.
A bit too long.
Just let me see my health bar so that I know when I need to heal.
You need to do the reference to, what is it? It's not, is it Old Boy?
Oh yeah, Old Boy.
The long hallway fight scene.
Yes.
You do one of those and like they take away the user interface. It's very cinematic until you die. So just don't die.
Yeah, so whoops. Maybe I will have to go back and do true Aegon, and then I will know.
You'll know true pain.
True pain. I mean, just having 2 phases was enough for me. So.
Yeah, no. If you're satisfied, I'm not going to try and take that away from you. Like,
Gonna have to get good.
It's fine. I am curious what style of talisman you gravitated towards. There's the normal style where it's just up to 3 charges will like blast. There's the full control where you can, depending on how long you hold it, it's 1 to 5, or the way of water or something where you don't have to like hold and charge anymore and it'll just automatically burst after a second, but you can no longer put multiple charges in.
It's funny, I was having some trouble getting used to the fact that I had to hold it. There's definitely a couple times where I was like, okay, there's the opportunity, and then I just don't hold it, and I was like, oh, wait, well.
You don't hold it, or you mistimed like your window, so you got hit out of it, and then those chi points are still spent.
But it's funny, the point where it crystallized in my brain was the exact moment that I tried to switch to water stance.
And then you've already been pre-ruined for that, and now you're trying to hold it.
Yeah. I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to the other one. I did use full control for a big portion of it, but then ultimately found once they were all upgraded that the upgraded regular mode was the most powerful.
I believe that's the case. For me personally, I swapped around a lot depending on the boss. So Lady Ethereal, since when you tag her with the talisman, she gets auto-stunned, essentially. So full control was just efficient. Just however many I had, just dump it in. It was free. Whereas for Aegon, I just could not figure out a timing that was great for it. And I ended up using water to just kind of do like these drive-bys while trying to maintain my health up with just regular attacks while it's about to burst.
No.
It ended up being a much longer fight than it needed to be, but hell, if I kind of learned it by the end.
Yeah, the main thing with the standard one is that when it's upgraded, you get bow charges.
Bow charges, which we have not mentioned.
Yeah, the bow is pretty good because the one mode of the bow stuns even bosses.
To varying degrees of efficacy, I think Aegon's still like, you can't exactly run up on her after using it, but it'll knock her out of an attack you don't like.
You have to be quick, but you can, right? So like, one of the things that I was doing against Aegon was you can stun her with the bow, dash, talisman dash, get the 3 key talisman off, get the bow charge back.
Yeah, that kind of crystallized in my mind as you were saying it. Okay, yeah, no, I should have done that.
And at some point of ways that was a little disappointing that I feel like that was the optimal strategy because like there are charms that give you other things you can do with your key.
Yeah, I never found them to be particularly maybe I just didn't experiment enough. I was finding the core combat loop worked well enough, and in particular the ones where it like you have to take internal damage in addition to spending the slots for this jade to get its ability. And I just kind of figure like, oh, I'm just taking too much errant damage. I don't know.
I never really messed with that one. I feel like that's a like all in. All I really want is to get more ki because I'm untouchable. I'm so good at this game. I just need to be able to like produce the charges quicker, right?
Yeah, there's one that gave you extra damage on your main hit combo, and I tried to pair that with the one that heals you on your combo, but you still end up bleeding health.
Yeah.
I think it's probably still worth it, but a lot of the interesting ones tended to use too much, and I couldn't get rid of the auto revive one. If you ever die, you get one last chance.
No, I didn't like the auto revive that much.
There are certain situations where it's functionally useless, but in my mind, I was just, hey, I was about to die and now I didn't, so now I can just take a hit off my pipe, which is how you heal, and we're back in there.
I don't know. I did frequently use quick heal.
Oh yeah, quick heal as well. Like, it's very hard to find gaps in the attack sequences otherwise. Certain attacks leave like a trail of fire, and if you die in one of those, the auto revive, which brings you back to like 1% HP, it just burns right through that. You don't get a second opportunity.
Yeah.
It's kind of busted. I think there should be some grace period for fire.
Yeah, that was one of the things, is that there is no invincibility frames whatsoever.
Nope.
You get hit, you are going to get hit again unless you parry the next one.
Yep. It feels bad to get hit. It feels good to parry. The parry sound is great. The hit sound is awful. It's perfect.
But yeah, I don't know. I did actually try water stance against Aegon and just like didn't do enough damage for me. I maybe needed to get really spammy with it and just be like, oh, there's an opportunity. Oh, there's an opportunity.
That's the key, is that, or chi, you get a lot more opportunities to just kind of spam it, and then it also releases the mental load of trying to like hold on to the burst, whether or not you have the time. You use it as a dash through her. For the most part, you just continually keep up the offense, and yeah, every spare moment, and you'll always have chi stored because you're only ever using one once it's fully upgraded per dash. And if you're not dying, then you're going to be defending, which means you're going to be charging up these points.
Oh, I mean, I felt like a lot of the end game bosses were just, because they attack so much, you're just like, look at all this ki that I have. I don't know how to hold it.
Yeah. Building up resources becomes less of a problem. It's about finding your windows of opportunity.
Yeah.
That is what this game appeals to, is this very tightly designed, like it's like I'd compare like Sekiro to Dark Souls, like a very bespoke way to play versus a vast amount of choice in how to build something. This game, I found I was comparing it mentally to Ender Magnolia or Ender Lilies as well, where there is a parry there. You don't really need to engage with it, but there are a lot of variations on how you want to approach combat, like which abilities, which all function vastly differently. It's a different approach to combat, and depending on whether or not you want to have a very tightly designed singular experience versus player expression. This one definitely leans towards the former.
I mean, like, there is still options. A lot of attacks, there is definitely like an optimal thing you should be doing, right? So like there's the crimson attacks, which are at first unblockable. Then you get the ability to spin on them or skull kick to disrupt them.
Yep. But only the dash attacks, which they kind of glow green on them. Then later you get your charged counter, essentially.
Yes, the unbounded counter.
Where if you get a spot to charge a little bit, but you can't just hold it because it'll just dissipate after a second or two. But you can then, previously unblockable attacks are then blocked by it.
And usually that like stun locks the boss.
Yeah, you get a big window of opportunity every time you're able to do that. It's a weirder timing because you have to pre-charge, but not so far in advance because, again, it'll just dissipate.
Yeah, I was awful at those.
I think about 3/4 of them I could get, but you can also just dodge. That's still an option.
Yeah.
You won't get as big a payout, but yeah. I did notice on Aegon, occasionally, like, you could guarantee that one was coming based on what her previous attack was. So if I can anticipate it, it's less reactionary, but yeah, some of them I don't think are even intended to be able to be countered. It's just, they're just so quick and out of nowhere.
I guess.
Yeah, I think she has one move where she like kind of just teleports above you and it's technically a thing, but I could never react.
Yeah, I don't know. People could probably do it, but not me.
Probably, but she ends up always following that up with her dash past you 3 hits in a row, and those were always punishable anyway, so it ends up working out in the wash.
Yes.
But as far as being a Metroidvania, because this is still a search action game, not just an action game.
It's true.
How did you feel about its map design and approach to nonlinear progression?
It's fine. I mean, it constrains you a fair amount most of the time. So, like, early on, I think you can do Kwafu and Gumong in any order. I certainly explored both of their areas before fighting both of them.
Okay. I definitely straight shotted to Kwafu myself.
I was like, hey, wait a minute, didn't I see a path over there that I could go to now that I understand this mechanic? And went and got the charged attack prior to fighting either of them. And then, like, I think Yan Lao, Jiquan, and Lady Ethereal are pretty linear. Maybe you could fight Jiquan before Yan Lao.
I don't think he appears until you've beaten 3 bosses. Like, he appears as like a story encounter.
Yeah, that's true.
He'll show up in a place you've already explored and then do a little prison escape set piece.
Yeah, that's fair. And then it opens up a little bit with Ji and Fushi and Nua.
Yeah, I think you can do either of those in any order, because at that point, after Ethereal, I think you get the double jump, which is the last traversal ability. So
yeah, it's fairly linear in that way. The traversal abilities are not amazingly interesting.
They're solid.
They are good in that they are involved in combat, although I frequently forgot that I could double jump.
Ooh, yes.
While fighting people. That doesn't come up so much, I guess.
Occasionally they're very high up, or the floor is lava for longer than you'd want. But yeah, generally staying grounded is a pretty good way to fight things.
Being in the air is not a bad way to fight them either. You don't have to care about the direction things come from when you're in the air.
That is true.
Though you also can't, like, heal or unbounded counter. So there are trade-offs.
Yeah. But you get your air dash, double jump. I think you start with the wall run.
Yeah.
And your air counter will also bounce you off things for some traversal. But yeah, for the most part, the order in which you do areas is semi-linear, as you're describing. I think within the levels themselves, you'll get enough branching paths and like do some minor environmental puzzles to get goodies. But I did find it almost trivial to get everything.
Yeah.
Like they weren't lousy with hidden walls or like invisible paths. There are a couple, but they're pretty easy to find. There's a robot who will sell you, or you can beat him up for map data, which just tells you how much of every goodie is in a zone. It doesn't tell you where it is, but it ends up not mattering because there's only a handful of things. A lot of them is money.
Actually, does buying that do anything at all, or is it literally just, well, if you feel bad about ripping out the robot's head, you can pay money to not feel bad?
As far as I'm aware, there's not only no downside to beating him up, there's an achievement for beating him up at least once. I paid every time, and I don't think I got anything for it, so robots don't count. They're not people. Even though they're powered by human brains.
Yeah. There was something about at release, you couldn't see the detailed map until you got the map chip, and they changed it to be give you information instead of give you the detailed map. It would have been pretty challenging if they didn't give you the detailed map, especially the one that is behind the boss of the zone.
Yeah, I definitely on instinct kept checking it, so I'm not sure how my playthrough would have been different without it, without the auto map. I did find that a lot of the time you can kind of 100% the area your first time through, at least starting with the old guy in the reliquary.
Yeah, there's not a lot of backtracking and retraversal contextualized by your new abilities.
Yeah, a couple of places where you'll go through a zone again just to get to like the next thing you've unlocked, which is a new area. And then mostly what I found was, I just missed it my first time through. I could have gotten here, didn't, but it was like a handful of chests. I found this, it wasn't rote. I think it works well for what the game's trying to get to is like a bit of exploration, but you're not wasting a lot of time scratching at corners instead of getting into the meat and potatoes of a fight. And also like the Lady Ethereal's platforming challenge Dreamscape, I wish there was a bit more of that. There are a couple of nifty like a dash, wall cling, navigate this tight danger zone kind of places, but I don't know. I think the movement was fluid enough, which was also like complemented in the combat, but yeah, it was good. It's not what you're here for. It's not in the search action genre. Search is in lowercase, action all uppercase.
Yeah, I guess so. Which also reminds me, what did you think about the def system and retrieving your money?
I wish I ever lost money so I could really tell you what the emotional impact would be. I definitely felt tense at times.
Oh, wow. Look at Mr. Best Gamer in the world over here.
I mean, I also got that jade that as long as you burst a talisman on the enemy that killed you, you'll get all your money back that way. If there was an enemy giving me trouble, I could at least tag it and not lose the money. But yeah, it seems unnecessarily cruel to lose all of your money if you're particularly deep. Tell me, lie down on the couch. How did that make you feel?
I mean, like, I'm also very used to these things, so it never bothered me that much. I did think it was maybe a little harsh in the beginning. Definitely before some things had crystallized. I was like, oh, well, I lost that money.
Yeah.
I swear there was a time where I died twice to someone without recovering their souls, and they still had them. And I was like, I'm confused. That's not how I thought this was supposed to work, but...
Oh, are you saying, like, they're not lost forever, you just eventually need to kill that thing?
I thought you do lose them, though.
I mean, that's what I assumed, but further research is needed. I mean, simply get good, obviously, but failing that, maybe you just need to eventually get good enough to get it back. A lot of rewards for chests and whatnot are like item souls, or not souls.
Yeah, sellable components.
Sellable components, so you can just like, they're not in danger of being lost, and you can just kind of chunk them out once you're ready to buy something.
And like, I found myself aggressively using those to make up the difference in amounts in order to get something, right? Again, what these systems do, I find, is incentivize you to, the moment you can buy something, go buy it.
It wants you to spend your money, which I think is probably good. Don't hoard.
So like, if you are losing your souls, or I keep calling them souls.
I know, right?
Your money, right? When you're just accumulating it, that's fine. But like, every time it gives you a shortcut back to the roots, which it will do fairly often, I will just be like, oh, all right, I've got something to spend this, or with this plus the sellable ones.
Get close enough and then just bank them into something that is useful. Fair enough.
So it kind of just like stopped happening. Not in that I was no longer dying, or no longer dying twice, but in that
you weren't losing a significant amount of gold anyway.
Yeah, I was dying with minuscule amounts. And it's like, okay, yeah, this is fine.
I mean, same for me. I was never hoarding gold anyway. There are a lot of things to buy, and I always had something to spend all this money on pretty much till the end of the game.
I think the way that I missed the last Shenong event was that I had not actually bought the last thing until like the very end.
Gotcha. Well, now you can, or you can just pretend you did. I'm not going to ask.
Yeah.
But you did bring up something that I forgot to mention. In each discrete zone, there's only the one save point, essentially, the bonfire, the warp back to your main hub. And so all of the levels are designed around like getting a bit of progress, finding a loop back. I found that it works pretty well for the most part, except for like a couple of tougher encounters, which requires a bit more of a run back than I would like.
Yeah.
There's just the one checkpoint. But I was fairly impressed with how, when you get the ability to warp to any given zone, the fact that, oh, each of these zones only had the one, I barely even noticed.
Yeah, that's fair.
While the traversal isn't the main focus, they did a lot to kind of streamline it. And while it's still fun and it gets you from A to B and from A to C to B to A back, this would not be the same game if it were just a linear series of hallways, fights, and boss fights. It does enough to justify its Metroidvania status.
Yeah, that's fair. There only being one save only really bugged me for like the captains or celestials.
The mini bosses.
Yeah. Optional mini bosses where it was actually very possible to die on like the first attack or the first three hits or whatever. And it's like, oh, dead again.
Yeah. They are all optional, I believe. Like for the most part, you can either run past them or just get around them. But they have good upgrade material stuff. You want to get them.
They did have the habit of locking you in, which was a little annoying if you were carrying things. There's at least one where I was actually carrying a significant amount, and it was like, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah. There's a minor increase in your main attack damage output throughout the game, but it's not so significant that you should be able to beat every boss as you encounter them.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that, because I noticed the Tau Fruit items are described as increasing your attack power.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it does increase your damage, but every time I encountered one of those mini bosses, the damage output was more than okay. And some of the early like fodder enemies would be dying real quick, but each individual fruit was a fairly minor increase if I could detect it at all. You get a lot of them, but it's not something that you have to really like mark down these enemies. They're not for you yet. It's not like a high-end game level area. It's just, you can come back later if you really need it, but they're beatable.
I mean, it would probably be easier if you came back with max health or whatever.
Sure.
With your upgraded talismans unlocked, you know. But...
Or just activate story mode, which is the only other difficulty other than standard. It's for people who are having trouble if they want to experience the story, which, as I think we've discussed, is worthwhile. It gives you two options, two sliders, one for your attack damage output and the percent of damage you take. There's sliders you can get very discrete values. I think damage is like 1 to 100%. Your attacks up to like 10 times. So you can really just lay waste, but that's it. So if you're having trouble, you can set it to where you're at for a tense boss fight, I guess. I don't know if you have any opinions on how this could work.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mess with it.
I did check it out just to see what it was. I would like more options, is what I'll say. Enter Magnolia had its increasing like a duration of stuns, or like it increases your like windows of opportunity. I think expanding parry window timing, or like the time in between attacks, getting into even more like nitty gritty gradations of all the different ways this game moves would be ideal, maybe not feasible.
I don't know. Something like Celeste's global game speed.
Exactly.
Might be an interesting assist mode option.
Yeah, because while attack and defense are good options, they're like the main things. When you're talking about like people with like lesser reaction speeds or like any number of things that I'm just clearly blind to as someone whose only virtue is being kind of good at video games, I can't even imagine. But again, like anytime I'm looking at these, I'm not particularly interested in protecting the ending of a hard game. Like I'd rather just like, okay, season the gameplay to taste while I can take the chef's special myself.
Yeah.
There's no colorblind option. Did that affect you at all?
There is a colorblind option. It's not good.
Oh, okay. That's what it was.
So the colorblind option, what it does is it changes your health bar and boss's health bars. From, instead of being green and red for internal damage, it switches it to orange and blue.
Okay.
That's fine. What you would probably want for a colorblind mode is to switch the boss's crimson attacks. And the green glow on their crimson attacks. It never really bothered me, but it was probably less perceivable than it should have been.
Like, you can infer at some point that it is the charge attacks that you need to block that are green, but yeah. And I guess the big black flames on the crimson attacks, you can see them, but like the quick color recognition isn't there.
And in particular, there was one mini boss in the grotto, which is leaving behind red bombs on a brown background.
My condolences.
Yeah,
I hated that already myself with two working gamer eyes.
I could barely see the bombs. So that's when I switched the colorblind mode on, hoping that it would change the color of the bombs, and it did not.
And you saw that the health bars were different, and that was it. And yikes.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of understand. It's like, it's much easier to mess with the color of UI than to mess with the color of in-game objects, but...
Yeah, I think we're kind of blue skying a lot of these critiques at the end here.
Yeah.
Pretty sure this Red Candle Games is a very small studio, if only like a couple of people.
Looking at the credits, I saw the same couple of names repeating in almost every department. So, yes, I think so.
Yeah, it's one of those.
When your main balance programmer is also doing your finance department, I think is what I noticed, if I recall correctly. It's like, yeah, okay, small studio. Not literally 3 guys or literally 1 guy, but
still, like, given the breadth of this game and how like well-tuned it is, honestly, I'm glad we got what we got, and there's always a chance for updates down the road. I know they're doing like prequel mangas for this now.
Yeah.
But who knows? Games can always be better. I know of at least a few games that are worse, and they belong on our stack rank.
Whoa. When you started talking about ending, I was actually going to try to transition you into it, but you went down a side path.
But as long as we got to where we need to go, I guess it's okay. Unless you had other things to add.
No, I'm good. I had a good time with this. Apparently, I have another phase of Agong to deal with, so probably another 5 hours.
You do not, under any circumstances, need to do this.
That's true.
You saw credits.
So I'm thinking of putting it in my top 10.
Currently, I am vacillating between whether it hits the top spot or not, so...
I'm going to say it's probably better than Haiku, which was number 6 for me.
Yeah?
I feel like my top is pretty biased towards things that are very combat heavy, but that's fine. That is how I am, apparently.
The one right above it is Animal Well, which is, I would not say, is a combat-heavy game, so,
That's fair. Very hard to compare between Animal Well and Nine Souls. They're doing very different things. They were both fun, though.
This whole thing is vibes-based. Honestly, we probably should have done a tier list, but,
Probably.
But it's too late now. Speaking personally, can I still justify Unsighted as the top slot, the best game? And having just earlier today done the boss rush of Nine Souls, I came to the conclusion that I would not speedrun this game, unlike Unsighted. Yeah. Unsighted was a game that I immediately dove back into and did everything else again several times. And so out of respect to the thing that still is a heartworm embedded in my chest that probably affects my brain at least somewhat, Unsighted remains at the top, but Nine Souls is a hell of a runner-up. New number 2.
No, it's unseating Metroid Prime.
Yeah, fuck that game.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree.
Does Metroid Prime have a parry? Unsighted has a parry. If it didn't, we would not be having this conversation. But we are going to have another conversation about another video game, and it is your turn to specify what that is.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for another one released last year. I'm going to go for Pompous and Celine.
Oh, I know what this game is.
So this is another reference to the Maze of Gallius, because apparently this was an inspiring game. So it'll be interesting to look through it.
This game also has co-op?
It does.
Now, what's your schedule like?
Rough.
Okay, so we'll probably not be engaging on this together.
Unfortunately.
That's fair.
I think it's pretty unlikely. I believe the Switch is local co-op only, and Steam might be online co-op.
I believe I looked into it, and Steam does have online co-op.
Oh.
In my memory. I've not checked in a while, but okay. I'll be Pompous, you'll be Celine. Perfect.
You always are pompous.
I'm very pompous. And if you have any other problems with my personality, be sure to let us know by emailing invertedcastlepodcast@gmail.com, leaving a comment on YouTube, review, wherever podcasts are sold. And of course, we are still on various social medias like X, @InvertedCastleP, never forget the P, or other places. You know how it is. I'm sure Tom will eventually see it.
Yeah.
But regardless, that's it for us. I've been Eric Fox.
And I've been Thomas Blight.
And remember, kids, if we just put our heads together, literally, like in a big vat. We can accomplish anything.